Happy Juneteenth, WUVA, or what I've been calling it up until 5 minutes ago, WUVA. My name is Indiyah. I'm a rising third year. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm majoring in African American Studies and Women and Gender and Sexuality Studies. As it is Juneteenth, which happens in June, it also coincides with Pride Month. So today, during my takeover, I'm going to be talking a little bit about queer identities and how they intersect with Blackness. I am in no ways an expert, but I'm going to share. On top of all that, Pride is coinciding in a very tumultuous moment dedicated to protests and conversations about racial relations. Overall, it's a crazy month. Stay tuned as myself and two other wonderful Black women at UVA talk about our experiences, talk about what you can do to celebrate Juneteenth, and how you can support the Black Lives Matter movement. So first and foremost, Pride Month is rooted in Black and brown liberation movements. It all started at the Stonewall Rebellion in 1969. It was a week of protests, and there is a lawnmower going on outside. I'm sorry, y'all. So I'm back. So the Stonewall Rebellions occurred in 1969, and it was basically a week of protests and demonstrations led by members of the LGBTQ community against police violence. And it was basically led by Black and trans women, so make sure you think a Black trans woman today. So one of the most prominent figures surrounding the Stonewall Rebellion is Marsha P. Johnson. She's a Black trans woman that is known for throwing the first brick that started the riots against the police violence at the Stonewall Manor in Greenwich Village in New York. She is also known as one of the co-founders of the gay liberation movement, along with Sylvia Rivera, another trans woman. So overall, they started all of this. And Marsha P. Johnson was not the last Black woman to completely revolutionize Black liberation and queer liberation. Now I'm going to name a few authors, poets, writers, filmmakers that are genuinely showing that Black women, specifically Black queer women, they're the blueprint. And it's very clear that Black queer struggles need to be included and prioritized in Black struggles altogether. And this isn't a new problem. This has been happening since the Black Panther Party, from SNCC. Black women and Black queer people have been excluded from the conversations, and they've been pushed into the background based on the patriarchy, based on homophobia, and even upholding white supremacy in Black struggles. Let's dig into this. So I'm going to get into how patriarchal standards, sexism, misogyny, specifically misogynoir, play a role in Black liberation movements and organizing efforts. So one of the biggest examples I can think of now is Black men typically use what privilege comes from those patriarchal standards, from being a man, and exerting force over Black women. So that forces Black women to face oppression on two different fronts, that of sexism and that of racism. And that's not even including the multitude of identities that can be layered on top of that, like sexuality, able-bodiedness, class. Misogynoir can be seen in the case of Alua Toyin Salah. She was a Black woman activist working out of Florida for the Black Lives Matter movement. She was only 19, and she was raped and murdered by a Black man. I bring up the story of Alua Toyin Salah because it shows how Black women are leading the charge on racial justice movements, yet they are not being treated with respect or the protection that they deserve within the Black community, much less from the world at large. Overall, protect Black women, and especially trans Black women. And because of these patriarchal standards, the Black Lives Matter movement often becomes only about cishet Black men. And that's encouraged a lot of people to include all Black lives instead of just Black Lives Matter. There was recently a march in Los Angeles this last weekend where they called it the All Black Lives March. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about your activism. Make sure it's not just one type of Black person that you're thinking of. Think of the entire community. So my time has come to an end. Make sure to tune in to listen to Panay and Corey throughout the rest of today. Happy Juneteenth, and make sure to continue educating yourself, learning about Black liberation movements and queer liberation movements.